Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning into the Federalist Files. On today's show, Americans funding cartels, a real crisis at the border, and how much this will cost a working-class American. What states the COVID money went to, Facebook runs ads for products of genocide in China, and finally, the gun control debate.
The crisis we have at the border right now is like a gathering storm, and the flood is coming. What I can share with you, Chris, is that I've got intelligence directly from Northern Triangle countries that these cartels, these waves of illegal immigrants, they aren't just being fueled by the organized crime in that part of the world. They're also being funded by U.S. taxpayers. That's right. U.S. taxpayer money flows through the State Department, through USAID, and that money is ending up in the hands of NGOs that are advertising for and facilitating the caravans and movements of people into our country. It's sad to admit it, but the U.S. government may be one of the biggest human traffickers in the world, because even after we get these folks, the policies of Joe Biden have us just sending them all around the country under a catch and release policy that Donald Trump had reversed with great success.
Hello, folks. Greatly appreciate you all for tuning in. That is the concerning clip of the day. That is Matt Gaetz. He is on Newsmax. He is a representative of Florida, Republican. He is stating from his intelligence that he has received that the American government, the U.S. taxpayers, are funding some of these organizations, some of these criminal, they call them coyotes, some of these drug and human trafficking organizations, because the U.S. taxpayer or the U.S. government will give U.S. taxpayer dollars to Mexico. Mexican government will give it to NGOs, as in non-governmental organizations, and then those NGOs will go and pass it on to the cartel. Which all does not surprise me at all, but I just think it was blatantly said and outright stated by Gaetz, and that's a story that I've yet to really see in the media. I've seen this huge story in the media thus far. Border facilities are packed. There's been a recent Project Veritas video that came out. I will show you that. That will be part of the program today, as well as some of this recent, while I was preparing the show last night, some of this recent activity. We had a shooter in, I'm trying to think of what state exactly it was. But we had a shooter that shot up, Boulder, it was Boulder, Colorado. He shot up, I think it was a supermarket, killed 10 people. And it turns out he's an Islamic extremist. So the story at first shifted. At first it was blame Trump. This guy's a white supremacist. White dudes are always shooting up, mass shootings, which actually statistically is not true. And I'm going to bring it up in my next show. I've been having some stats that I've been putting together for that. So we'll go over that next show. We'll get much more into it. But the debate has shifted from, oh, this guy's a white supremacist, this is all Trump's fault, this is all the conservatives' fault, to now suddenly it's, oh, well, we need gun control, when they find out that it is an Islamic terrorist. That is not a fan of Trump, by the way. They have, his tweets are all over the internet, him trashing Trump, talking about how great Obama is. And here's the thing, folks. I don't like to sit here and make a political argument over while the bodies are still warm. It's just not my style. But the left always has to come out and they use everyone's lives or these dead people as political arguments. They always use it as for their political expediency, which I don't really like to do. That's why I'd much rather talk policy. I'd much rather talk statistics about how gun control just does not work. And that's I'll have a brief, and I had this already planned in the show before any of this transpired yesterday. So I had some just some brief statistics lined up on the gun control debate, but I'm going to get to that later. I'll start off first with this White House not allowing journalists to access these border facilities. Jen Psaki recently came out in an interview, said that, or in a press conference, said, oh, well, we're glad to, or it wasn't her, I'm sorry, it was Mayorkas. I think his name is Alexander or Alejandro Mayorkas, the secretary for the DHS, said, "We are glad to let you see our HHS facilities, but they don't want them to see the Customs and Border Protection facilities because they are a complete disaster." So there's zero access right now to these border facilities for journalists. And you ask why? Here, and additionally on top of that, and this is a story that I have from last week that I'm carrying over as well, the Biden administration employed FEMA to the border. So they've been calling this, they haven't been calling it a crisis or an emergency. Meanwhile, they mobilize FEMA, which stands for Federal Emergency Management Administration. So I guess maybe it is a emergency. The DHS secretary, and this is straight from Reuters. I'm going to have everything, as always. It'll all be in the show notes below. I'm going to have a lot of information to this one. Everything that I'm stating, everything I go out with, all these statistics, it will all be in the description below. And I usually put the headline as show notes, whether you're watching on Rumble or you are watching on podcast. Podcasts, sometimes I'm actually not able to fully cite everything just because there's a character limit. So go to Rumble. I'll also have the Rumble link in the podcast. So you can always just go to Rumble if you want to. You'll always be able to find all of that information. Same thing with YouTube, but I don't like to advertise YouTube because they screw me. So next, like I said, I have this Reuters article, and it states DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said in news release that he would deploy the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I quote, to help receive, shelter, and transport the children over the next 90 days. So apparently they mobilized the FEMA units to help out because it's a complete disaster. They're ill-equipped right now, and unfortunately for our Border Patrol guys, they are probably using a lot of their own money, and I've heard different stories of this from different sources. They're probably using their own money to actually pay for some of these people, to give them blankets, give them food, give them certain things out of their own paycheck, because it's a complete disaster. Now, next one, I also have a Daily Wire piece. Border officials under gag order barred from speaking to the press. So that's another thing now. And this is straight off of NBC reporting. Daily Wire is quoting NBC. This is written by Tim Pierce. As NBC reports, Border Patrol officials have been told to deny all media requests for ride-alongs with agents along the southern land border. Local press officers are instructed to send all information queries, even from local media, to the press office in Washington for approval, and those responsible for cultivating data about the number of migrants in custody have been reminded not to share the information with anyone to prevent leaks, the official said. Multiple news organizations, including NBC News, have requested access to or photos from inside overcrowded border processing facilities holding unaccompanied migrant children. They have all been denied. The DHS press office released one photo late Tuesday of a mother and child undergoing a health screening inside a border facility, but no wider shots to show conditions or sleeping arrangements. So this is a complete disaster on the border. They are not allowing CBP officers to even speak to the media. And I believe if there was a Freedom of Information request from the media, they may be able to get in there, but to process it, it may take so many months that it's not even worth really going through the trouble of doing so. So what I have the Texas, this is Donna, Texas. This is the border situation, the border facility in Donna, Texas. This is a Project Veritas clip. Exclusive. They have photos from the facility. Check it out.
Project Veritas has obtained never-before-seen photographs of what it actually looks like inside this facility. Shocking images showing people wrapped up in what looks like metal foil, laying on the ground, their faces covered. Why won't the administration be honest about this? Why won't they show you these images?
Again, we remain committed to sharing with all of you the treatment.
She dodged the question, saying, quote,
and we remain committed to transparency. I don't have an update for you on the
timeline, end quote. Well, Press Secretary of the White House, let Project Veritas do your job for you. Just last night, we have now obtained these photos inside this facility. Now, these photos are very, very grim. Project Veritas has also learned these photographs were taken in the last few days. There are 8 pods with 8 cells in each facility. At any given moment, there are an average of 3,000 people in custody inside this detention center. The pod has 8 cells that are currently holding 600, that's 600 unaccompanied juvenile males aged 7 to 17.
For you folks just listening, there to give you a visual, there are people, and apparently this is a facility with 7 to 17-year-old males, unaccompanied minors, and they are covered with these, I think they call them space blankets. They're like tinfoil-looking blankets in these facilities, and it was something like, if I can find the numbers specifically, I know I posted this video on Facebook, so any of you that follow me there, I think it was 600 people. I'm going to try to pull it up now. My apologies. I could have swore I had it written in my notes, but I guess I did not. I failed to do so. They have something like it was 600 people in each, let's see. I know I threw it up there on the screen. Nope, that is the recording of it. See if I can find the exact specific numbers. Okay, so never before seen images. 7 to 17-year-old, this pod, and specifically this pod that these pictures represent, has 8 cells currently holding 600 unaccompanied juveniles. And reports say that there have been multiple sexual assaults, normal assaults, and daily medical emergencies. So if you do the math on that, you have 8 cells for 600. What is that? Is that something like, I want to say maybe 75? Is that 75 people in each one of those little pods? Which is really, that's the number. That's a lot. That's a lot to hold in a pod like that. So they're obviously it's a total mess, disaster. They're not following any type of COVID policies. And that's what their reasoning right now is. Oh, well, the COVID, which doesn't really make any sense. That's why we're not letting anybody in. That's why we don't want anyone to see, because COVID is such a dire existential threat to everybody's lives. And it's all just a bunch of virtue signaling garbage from the left, as always. And if you want to compare this to the Trump administration, in the way that it went, the Trump administration, and I think Trump actually came out with a statement about it. And I'm not going to sit here and report every single thing that Trump says, but he came out with a statement about it. And he was talking. It's just, this is what he's going to come out and do, folks. For these next 4 years, he will come out, every single bad thing that happens from the Biden administration, he's going to come out and he'll just draw a comparison. That's going to be his plan. That will be his focal point this entire time. He'll be like, oh, look at that. Look how they're doing it, and look how I did it for the 4 years. And we've never seen, I believe the numbers have increased 3 times more than the largest numbers were ever reported during the Trump administration. So we're seeing more than an influx. We're seeing almost an exponential increase. And there's some statistics to back up. There's a lot of news on the construction of the border that back up why this has been such a substantial and such a crisis to begin with. And so Tom Homan, who's the former acting director of the U.S. Customs and Border Enforcement during the Trump administration, I think it was from 2017 to 2018, and then I think shortly thereafter he retired. He was on Mark Levin's show, and he explains the entire immigration system. Play 3.
That 90% of the Central Americans that come to our border and claim asylum never get relief from U.S. courts because they simply don't qualify. That data is easily available on the Department of Justice website. Anybody can look at it. And I doubt President Biden has looked at it or Alejandro Mayorkas has looked at it, because if they did, then they're facilitating immigration fraud on the border. It just ignore that. 90% of Central Americans don't get relief from U.S. courts that claim asylum. And if you look at the Department of Homeland Security life cycle report, less than 3% of all Central Americans who get ordered removed by a federal judge have left this country. So knowing that 90% don't qualify and less than 3% leave as ordered by a federal judge, what's your answer? Open the border, let them come in. This isn't incompetence. This isn't foolishness. This is by design, Mark. I said back in July 2020, I wrote an op-ed saying if Joe Biden becomes president, we lose the border. Joe Biden has sold out this country to the progressive left to win an election. He's a different person he was when he was vice president during the first surge in 14-15. Alejandro Mayorkas is a different person he was in FY 14-15 when he was deputy secretary. They know what causes surges. They know how to stop them, because I was there and we stopped it. They're doing the complete opposite. Oh, we'll stop this surge. How did we stop it in 14-15 when Mr. Mayorkas was deputy secretary? We built detention facilities, thousands of them. We held people long enough to see a judge. We let ICE remove them, and we took away the enticements. What are they doing now? They're not detaining them. They're releasing them as soon as they can, within 3 days. ICE has been decapitated. They lost 90% of their authority. They're not executing judges' orders, and we keep throwing out more enticements. This isn't incompetence. This is by design. This is an open borders agenda that we all knew was coming.
And just to draw the comparison, if you think if these illegal aliens that were entering the country in droves, if they were to be voting, if they were Republican voters, do you think the Democrats would be so willing and so open to keep the borders open? And this is a system that has been little reported on the specifics of the way in which the system plays out. As Holman says, you have 90% of all these Central American illegal aliens. 90% of them don't even reach the qualifications for asylum because they're not truly asylum seekers. They're told by the cartels what to say. They walk up with a sheet of paper, all of them saying the same statement that has been taught to them by the cartels. Now, 3% of them actually end up being sent back to Central America, and I remember years ago reading an article about it, and this is the case because none of them even show up for the court date. This catch and release program was not working, that's why Trump got rid of it. They had the stay in Mexico policy, so you came with your asylum seeking, you'd have to stay in Mexico until your court date came up, and then you'd have to show up to your court date. And then whether or not you reached the qualification for asylum, then you were let into the country or you were sent back to the country of, or your original country. So the way they're doing it now is catch and release. They're just catching them at the border, letting them right into the country, giving them a court date. And in this case, Tom Homan's saying they're not even giving them court dates. But the way it was going before is give them a court date. Then, 90% of them weren't even showing up for the court date. So this is a system, this is just a system set up to allow illegal aliens with absolutely no auditing system to just come right into the country, zero accountability, and the burden is all put on those individual local governments and state governments, and that is the reason in which they're suing the Biden administration, because the tax burden of these people being here, when they go to an emergency room, they have to be seen by U.S. law. So once they go to an emergency room, they need care, and somebody has to front the bill for the care. Who's it going to be? It is going to be the local citizens there. It's going to be the local as well as the state governments that end up paying for these illegal aliens to be here. People what they'll point to is, they still pay sales tax. Yeah, well, sales tax. Listen, folks, sales tax isn't income tax. It's not property tax. It's not all the other taxes that regular working class Americans, and especially, the income tax is substantial. It's a substantial amount of money, and they're not paying that. And that's really what the problem is. And the reason for allowing all these people to come into the country is because the Democrats, they're planning for an amnesty anyway. So it doesn't really matter to them. They're just going to legalize all these people from being here. And as many people, they're incentivizing them to come here by offering amnesty. And more people are coming in to try to make the cut to receive the amnesty. So if you're in the country illegally, and, Biden said, well, amnesty will start on this date. If you're in the country illegally and you just got here, you can just lie about the date that you got here. Nothing's going to stop you from doing so. Biden makes it like these people that they're handling and the administration makes it like the people they're handling they're too stupid to even understand any. It's just, these people they know how to run the system. And that's why they're here. And it's just not fair to everybody else. Everybody else that's waiting on the line to immigrate here legally is getting screwed in the process. So next I have this Breitbart piece. And I'm going to go hard on this. Unfortunately, folks, first half of the show is mostly going to be immigration stuff. So Biden, he begins immediate catch and release of migrants' families without issuing court dates, is a Breitbart piece written by Ryan Clark. It states, Breitbart Texas confirmed the report with a second official operating under the umbrella of CBP, as in Customs and Border Protection. The implementation of the plan follows a short discussion of the matter reported on by Breitbart News late Saturday night. The migrant families will be released without a notice to appear, a formal charging document that begins the removal process, according to sources. The plan was implemented early Sunday morning and is now in effect. The source states the plan allows for prosecutorial discretion by the Border Patrol for all migrants who enter with children, to include whole family units. A one-sheet arrest report is completed along with criminal record checks and a photograph of the migrant. The new process relies on migrants to tell officials what city they will be traveling to. The migrant is subsequently asked to report to the nearest immigration court office when they arrive so they can place themselves into formal removal proceedings. So what they're doing right now, folks, they are so backed up. They are giving the migrant, they're giving them the paperwork and saying, okay, well, you can go file wherever you move to. You have to go to the immigration court that is nearest to where you move to and give them the paperwork so you can start your removal proceedings or your court date, which they're not doing. Obviously, they're not going to do that. Why would you? It's like asking a legitimate criminal to put the cuffs on themselves and walk them to the police station. They're not going to do that. It makes no sense why they would. So that's the way they're setting this program up right now, because they're so overwhelmed and inundated with people that they can't handle it. And it goes on. Without a notice to appear, the migrants are free to travel about the country and are not officially placed into the immigration court system. The court cannot order the removal of a migrant in absentia for failing to appear for a future court date, the source explained. The existence of a removal in absentia order from the court allows immigration officials to remove the alien without appeal if they are later encountered under this new process. The migrants will not have a removal in absentia order for failure to appear. Officials issued no order to appear under the unprecedented plan put in place by the Biden administration on Sunday morning. So I'm going to try to give you a synopsis that explains this better. The notice to appear is not being given at the border, and that's usually what is given. That's a formal charging document that is handed to them, where it's a court date, essentially. They're getting their papers for a court date, okay, at the border. Usually that's how it works. Well, what they're doing is they're releasing them and saying, okay, so you now have to go and you have to report to the nearest immigration court, and they will give you a notice to appear in court. And upon getting that notice to appear in court, if you don't show up in court, next time you are arrested or you were detained, then you can now be removed for being absent and not showing up to your court date. You can be removed from the country and sent back to where you came from. So in this case now, they're not doing that. They're doing none of that notice to appear on the border, and it is up to the discretion of the person, of the illegal alien that shows up to whatever city they show up to go and get themselves their court appeal, which they're not going to do. They're not going to get their notice to appear. They're not going to go do that themselves. Why would they? Because then they know they have a chance of actually getting deported. And that's why only 3% of them are actually being deported, because they're not following the rules, obviously. They didn't follow the rules to get here, folks. They wouldn't, once in here, follow the rules out of nowhere, out of the goodness of their heart. So Congressional, and now I have the actual effect on the taxpayer that all of this is going to have, along with the lowering of the wage as well, which I've explained many times. Supply and demand economics, supply and demand for labor. There's going to be a lower demand, and there's going to be a huge supply of labor, because we're having undocumented or illegal aliens that are unskilled laborers coming into our country, into the labor market, thus lowering the wage. Almost artificially, really, because we're getting just an influx. Congressional amnesty would cost taxpayers $35 billion. Breitbart.com piece, written by Sean Moran. So this is an interesting piece, just to explain the amount of money that this will all cost the working class. The Migration Policy Institute found the legislation could grant amnesty to roughly and this is if they went forward with amnesty, to roughly 4.4 million illegal aliens and the 11 to 22 million illegal aliens living in the United States. So we don't even have a set number, so those are just Those are just estimations because we legitimately, dude, to me, I think the number is way higher than 22 million illegal aliens, to be honest with you folks. I think that number is from something like 10 years ago, just because they're so unsure of what the actual numbers are. Democrats and some Republicans voted for the legislation as roughly 17 million Americans remain unemployed due to the coronavirus pandemic. The legislation passed through the House Thursday evening with 228 votes in favor of the bill and 197 votes against it. 9 House Republicans voted in favor of the Democrat amnesty bill. Of course they did. The CBO, as in the Congressional Budget Office, released its estimate of the DREAM Act, that's what they're calling amnesty, and found it would cost $35.3 billion over the next 10 years. I just love how, even knowing this, we have politicians that are such hacks that they go forward with it because they know that a tax on a politician, somebody that has that much money to begin with, a tax on rich people, it's like meaningless to get taxed. When you make millions, when you're worth $10 million and they say, oh, well, your income's going to be taxed at 50%, you're still in that area where once you have FU money, essentially. You have the money where you can flip people the double barrel middle finger and say, F you, I don't care anymore. They have that kind of money, and that's the way they vote. But you, working class, a 5% tax increase on a working class American is a serious amount of money to you. It's a couple $1,000s at the end of the day. But for rich people, it doesn't matter. That's why they don't care. That's why these politicians, they don't really care about anyone. They just kind of vote however they feel. It doesn't really matter. Their constituency might vote them out, but at the end of the day, for them, they already made their money because they're in the government already. It goes on. The nonpartisan agency found that the primary cost of the amnesty would arise from illegal immigrants obtaining eligibility for the Affordable Care Act, or rather Obamacare, and Medicaid tax credits, as well as the earned income and child tax credits. In contrast, the federal government would only receive slight revenues from migrants receiving lawful permanent residence status by charging them corporate income and Medicare taxes and the non-refundable portion of tax credits for health insurances. The federal government would also expect additional costs from those with LPR status from obtaining eligibility for Social Security benefits while only receiving slight revenues from Social Security payroll taxes. Overall, the Dream and Promise Act would cost $42.48 billion and bring in revenues of, so for allowing these people into our country, right? We're going to revenue from the taxation that we take from amnesty, right? We're going to bring in $7.15 billion. So you say, oh, wow, we're going to make that much. But guess what? It's going to cost us $42.48 billion because of the amount of social programs that they need in this country. And the root cause of a lot of problems in this country is the social programs. The war against drugs failed. War against poverty failed. All of these different wars that the government has, they all fail. War in Iraq failed. They are failed programs. These social programs are failures. So we have people coming here. They're looking to live off the social safety net. They are going to bring in $7.15 billion, but then they're going to cost us $42.48 billion estimated because they're going to be on Obamacare, Medicaid tax credits. They're going to have some sort of Social Security that they didn't even pay anything into. So overall, this would end up costing us $35 billion once you subtract the $7.15 billion in revenue from the $42.48 billion in how much it would cost us in the next 10 years, they're saying. Jen Psaki, next, she's asked about the National Guard sleeping in a garage after January 6th and paying for illegal aliens accommodations. This is just hilarious. Check out Play 5.
That's a disparity a lot of people are pointing out, that our National Guard was treated one way, and then illegal immigrants are going to be put in hotel rooms.
Well, first let me say that at the time when we became aware of the conditions National Guard troops were in parking garages, as you noted, the president called the head of the National Guard that day and offered his assistance, offered to play any role that he could play, boosting morale, asking for more aid, making sure they had the right, were treated in the way that they deserved for the incredible role they've played.
So if you don't remember what happened that day, actually, after it was found out that these National Guard troops were in the parking garage, I think it was something like there was 500 of them in one parking garage, one bathroom, one outlet. The next day, then Joe Biden's wife went and took pictures with them, did a big photo op. Joe Biden didn't show up. He was nowhere to be found. And Joe Biden, additionally, you're the president of the United States, and you called the National Guard, said if they needed any. I mean, that's the strongest. Those are the strongest strings that you can pull as the president of the United States. You can pull something off and be like, hey, call up one of these hotels and say, hey, we got some money in the fund. We're the executive branch of the government. We have some sort of defense funding that we could spend to keep these guys in a nice place. If that was really the case, you couldn't have done that. I find that very hard to believe. I think it's just a BS answer. I think Jen Psaki actually is not speaking to Joe Biden in any terms, in any case. So I just think she goes up there and she just does her best to, and you almost feel bad for her because she's so uninformed. I think she just does her best to BS her way out of these press briefings every single day. So next I have another article about the spending as well, having to do with illegal aliens. Halt of the border wall is costing citizens millions of dollars per day. There's a Bongino piece, and I think it quotes directly from, trying to think of where the piece, it quotes directly from another piece. Just to give them the credit, to Breitbart, it quotes Breitbart. I think it might have some other, no, just Breitbart. Okay. So, the halt of the border wall is costing people millions per day. This is written by Matt Palumbo. Brad Palumbo, I have him later in the show. And it states, the pause of construction of the border wall cost taxpayers about $6 million per day while construction sites sit idle, Breitbart, Texas learned from a senior Department of Homeland Security official. On Sunday, March 21st, the 60-day pause in construction of the border wall is scheduled to end. According to the source, the expenditures are required for materials orders placed before the pause and expenses for the cost of equipment sitting idle. When the issuance of a stop work order causes a contractor to idle equipment, they are entitled to be compensated for rental expenses or costs of ownership. So right now we're spending approximately $6 million per day just to keep these machines idle, to keep the parts, the equipment, all at the border ready to build more. And I believe the number was something like 450 miles thus far have been built. Yeah, so Trump presidency has built 450 miles of wall, and I don't know how much there was left. I remember reading the article. I want to say it was something like maybe a couple, with hundreds of miles. So they had a couple hundred, I guess, left. And that's really where people are leaking in, folks. It's where there is no wall. So it's funny that, this idea of a wall actually proved to be effective. And additionally, he also quoted a study, as per the Immigration Reform Law Institute, that illegal aliens cost each taxpayer $6,940 per year. So $6,940 per year. Each illegal alien being in this country costs the regular working class American. So for having these illegal aliens here, taxpayer pays $6,940 per year. So that's always great to hear that. And I assume those are probably low estimates because we don't actually know how many illegal aliens are here, people that come here on work visas. And this is not only people from Central America. This could be Canadians. This is also people from Europe. I've known actually many people that were from Europe that are illegal aliens because they were here on work visas. Their work visas would expire and they would never renew them. You are now an illegal alien in the country. So to end, and that's to wrap all that up, but additionally, and all this has been done, all this spending that we've had thus far, they're going to push their next move on top of amnesty, on top of eliminating the filibuster, what else is there, gun reform, all of that they're going forward with. They're going to attempt to raise the taxes on everybody. They're saying that it's going to be only $400,000. Now they're saying it's going to be anybody that makes $200,000. But additionally, this raising the tax, or it's just not going to work. Psaki came out recently. She said businesses won't raise their prices just because we raise taxes. She's talking about corporate tax, which is going to be raised as well. It's going to be raised to 28% by their estimation. Right now it's 21%. This is written by John Hawkins. Now they have some studies that they source from Matt Palumbo in recent dates. If you click on the Bongino piece, you can see the hyperlinks that are in the article. So there's a couple things here that list how that tax will actually hurt and raise prices. It will hurt a working class American. So it says a review of the academic literature on the corporate tax conducted by the U.S. Department of Treasury found that labor may bear a substantial portion of the burden from the corporate income tax. So you say, what does that mean, labor? So labor is, and you won't get as many hours, you're not going to get paid as much. When we hit a corporation with a tax, that will that will deter them from giving you more hours to work. That will also deter them from giving you raises. You will be getting paid less money. Now, economist Arnold C. Harberger, known for authoring a seminal paper on the effects of the corporate tax income, or the corporate income tax rate on international trade, has found that labor bears over 80% of the corporate tax. Man. So that labor, 80% of the corporate tax rate. So, in other words, when they get taxed, 80% of that tax, whatever that tax is, 80% of that tax, whatever percentage it is, the labor gets affected. So essentially, if they decide to raise the taxes to try to better explain it, 21% to 28%, that is a 7% increase. Of that 7%, 80%, so let's just try to round it off to an even number, 5% of it is going to be on the laborer. It's not on the employer. So the employer passes 80% of whatever tax they get in corporate tax onto the employee. The employee will be eating that tax, whether it's less hours or it is less pay or just not as frequent raises. Another way they do this is they get rid of your health care. They'll only pay 80% of your health care, whereas before they were paying 95% of your health care. They'll do little things like that to attempt to lower their costs as the employer, and it's supposed to be, you're not supposed to really see it. It's subliminal almost. People that don't pay attention to how much they're getting charged, don't look at their pay stub every single time. People that aren't paying into their 401k, if they were getting a 5% match, maybe now they're only getting a 4% match. They do little things here and there to diminish their costs without attempting to diminish your income, because then it's really obvious once you see it in your income. So rather they'll say, oh, well, we'll pay less into this, we won't offer this employee program, we won't do this, we won't do that. So the laborer or the employee always gets hurt in these corporate tax rates. According to Oxford University economist Lee Liu and Rutgers economist Roseanne Altshuler, for every $1 increase in corporate tax revenue, wages decreased by 60 cents. So in this case, 60% of every single, because $1, 60 cents, 60% of corporate taxes are paid by the employee. They're not paid by the employer in that case. And that is only wages. That has absolutely nothing to do with whether you have health care, whether you have a 401k match, whether you have, dentist or dental care, anything like that. Or even days off. Maybe before they were giving you 5 weeks of vacation every year, maybe now it's only 4. So according, what do I have next? So Weiji Arumnapalan, Michael Derverix, and Georgia Maffini of Oxford University, I'm sorry for butchering your names, found that $1 in additional corporate taxes reduces wages by 92 cents in the long run. So every single dollar, and this is another case, an Oxford University study, $1.92. So that's a 92% decrease in wages. 92% of the tax burden is on the employee rather than the employer. So all of these cases, and they all have one thing that they are that relate all of them. They all have one correlation: is every single corporate tax rate on these corporations. It has been seen in every single one of these cases, every single one of these studies, that the employee pays for the corporate tax rate. The corporation does not pay when they get hit with a hardcore tax. The employee pays most of it. Yeah, maybe the employer pays a little bit. Maybe the employer pays, 20% of it. But then the employee gets hit with the other 80%. So which one do you want? You want a corporate tax rate to be raised so then now you're getting damaged and your income's getting damaged. You're not making the same. And yeah, you'll be making the same, right? But then with the with the rate of inflation over the years, you won't get the same raises that you would have had before. That's why it's kind of easy to come out with these plans, because you go, oh, well, my money hasn't been affected. I make the same. Yeah, you make the same for now. If it weren't for that, the rate of inflation over time, you making $40,000 every single year for the next 5 years, that fifth year, if the inflation rate's high enough, it's like you ended up actually getting a decrease in your pay. And the inflation rate would be high enough because of different corporate taxes. Taxes are not a net good on our society. I don't know why some of the liberals think that they are. They are not a net good. If they were a net good, then what you would do is you would sign a gift to the government every single year when reporting your taxes. And if you ask liberals if they do that, I can guarantee you probably 99% of them do not do that, considering the government in gifts every single year, the government usually brings in $10 million. That's it, $10 million. In this country, we're made up of, GDP-wise, we're almost 30 trillion, and we're only able to bring in 10 million. That is infinitesimally smaller than how much we bring. It is a decimal I can't even bring up because it's such a small decimal. And here's another one. Allison Phoenix. A 1 percentage point increase in the marginal corporate tax rate decreases annual wages by 0.7%. So in that case, 70% of the burden of the tax, the increased tax, 70% of it is paid by the employee. So in every single one of these cases, more of the tax is being paid by the laborer than the employer. And here's another stat here. It's also worth noting that Joe Biden wants to raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%, even though the average corporate tax rate in Europe is only 19.35%. And some nations like Ireland only have a 12.5% rate. If you owned a corporation, would you rather be headquartered in Ireland and paying a 12.5% corporate tax rate, or in the United States paying 28%? 28% tax rate. So really the key to this is the higher you raise the corporate tax rate, you're going to see a mobilization of people going to other countries to work just to save that money on the tax rates. They're going to go to some other European country that is more tax friendly. I know a lot of people actually go to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, there is no federal tax rate, so they only pay a 3% tax because there can't be any taxation without representation in Puerto Rico. So there's a 3% corporate tax rate. It's unbelievable. But that's what the government, if they go forward with this is a loser for the American people. This is a loser if you are middle class looking for a job. This is a net loser for our society. Top 20 COVID bailout states. This is a Foundation for Economic Education article written by Brad Palumbo. State bailout money, saying it was never necessary. In the president's telling, this is much needed aid that will allow municipal governments facing massive COVID-related revenue pitfalls to pay their frontline emergency responders and essential personnel. But the facts reveal a very different story. While it's plausible on its face to think that COVID would have led to a revenue drop for state and local governments, this never materialized in most places. According to J.P. Morgan, state revenue was virtually flat in 2020 nationwide, while 21 states actually saw slight revenue upticks. Cato Institute economist Chris Edwards noted that while there was a significant downturn in state revenue in the second quarter of 2020, overall it was balanced out by an uptick in the third quarter. And he states, there is no need for more federal aid to these states. So in other words, folks, everyone saw the same money coming in. The state revenue stayed about the same as it was the year before, so there was no reason for the federal government to come in with this insane amount of aid. So it was $350 billion in this last COVID spending bill of state aid, which costs each individual taxpayer $2,400. And they gave this money based off of unemployment numbers and not population, because they knew the people that did the bidding of the Democrat Party and shut down their states in order to win an election, they knew that those states would now could get their repayment for what they did. They incentivized these individual states to shut down and get more and more unemployed people, because then the states would get paid off and bailout money. And the state bailout money was not going to be given to the people that were laid off. It was just given to the government to do as they pleased with it, because they're ill managers. They don't know how to manage money. The government, like I said, is almost a net loss almost all of the time. It must be noted that the list is skewed to include more blue states that voted for Biden, 13 of them. So of these 20 states that received aid, the top 20, 13 of them are blue, and 6 of them are red. It was in many cases Republican governors who opted for lighter restrictions and abandoned harsh lockdowns. In states like Florida, this has averted the unemployment and social destruction other states experienced without producing noticeably worse COVID deaths. The only explanation is political favoritism. One could argue that perhaps focusing on the unemployment rate is meant to ensure that aid goes to the states shortest on revenue. But why not use actual revenue shortfalls then? Indeed, California tops the list for bailout money, yet the Golden State is actually running at a budget surplus. So in California, they had a budget surplus as in. At the end of the year, there was no deficit. They didn't owe money to the government. They didn't even break even. They actually had more money than brought in than they actually needed to run the government, and I think they were number 2 on the list. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. They were number 1 on the list because they have the most unemployed people. Part of the reason they do is because they have a very high population, but the other reason is because they've been shut down this entire time. Now, do you think that money that has been given to the state government in California is going to be given to those people that are unemployed and got laid off because the state of California decided to shut down the entire state? That is not the case. They're not going to be doing that. And that's really what the problem is at the end of the day, folks. They put political expediency above you. They want their party to win, and their party won, and now they've been incentivized, and they've been given money for helping their party win, and you get screwed. You lost your job, you lost your livelihood in a lot of cases, and now your family is destitute, and you have to figure out how you are going to put food on the table. So to kind of start off, and I'm going to have more information on this probably over the weekend on the weekend special. Just to start off, a little bit of information about how guns prevent thousands of what's it called every day? What's it say? Thousands of deaths every day. Guns prevent thousands of crimes every day. My apologies, I got the headline wrong. So this is written by Lawrence Reed. He gets his information off gunfacts.info. He also gets some of his information off the CDC website. And let's see if I have anything else that he noted. No. Okay. So everything that he has, once again, will be hyperlinked in the paper, and the source will be in the show notes that I will have myself. So it starts off, guns prevent an estimated 2.5 million crimes a year, or 6,849 every day. Most often, the gun is never fired and no blood, including the criminals, is shed. So the best way to try to explain this, which people don't really understand, the idea of the sole fact of brandishing a weapon alone deters people from committing acts of violence or crimes. Somebody comes to rob me, all they have is a knife. I whip out a Glock. They have no answer, they run away. So that is a crime that had been prevented in that case, and it not only has been a crime that's been prevented, but it's also helped me, not get hurt, not lose my life, not lose my wallet, not lose my money. Next, every year, 400,000 life-threatening violent crimes are prevented using firearms. 60% of convicted felons admitted that they avoided committing crimes when they knew the victim was armed. 40% of convicted felons admitted that they avoided committing crimes when they thought the victim might be armed. So if you see somebody, you think that they have a firearm on them, or they do have a firearm, they're an open carry permit, or they just have open carry depending on what state you're in. This deters felons from or criminals from attacking you or committing a crime upon you or robbing you in that case. Felons report that they avoid entering houses where people are at home because they fear of being shot. So the idea of having arms, if it's a state like a Mississippi or a Tennessee or a Missouri or a Florida, if it's a state where they really respect the right to bear arms as well as the castle doctrine, you're not going to see a lot of robberies in those areas. You're not going to find a lot of assaults because they're afraid that people are armed, these criminals. Fewer than 1% of firearms are used in the commission of a crime. So usually 99% of the time when a crime is being committed, more than 99% of the time, there is no firearm being used in the case. So yeah, I'm sure sometimes if you're robbing a bank, maybe the bank robbers will have arms. But most of the time, or more than most of the time, 99% of the time that a crime is being committed, there is no firearm on the person committing the crime. So in trying to disable firearms, you only hurt the regular law-abiding citizen from defending themselves. You give them an inability to defend themselves. And it does not help with preventing gun violence. Because if these criminals were willing to go get the firearm illegally to begin with, because they're not, right now a lot of these laws that are put in place, it is actually, you go through a NICS check, it's a federal background check. If you're a criminal or a felon, you're not going to be able to get a firearm legally. You're going to have to go illegally and buy the firearm to begin with. So all the rules that we already have in place already prevent illegal or felons, illegal aliens as well. But felons, that was a Freudian slip because the next clip that I have to play for you, it'll explain it, but it prevents felons from getting firearms to begin with. So any gun control now at this point is only to hurt and harm the regular law-abiding citizen. And there's another study, and this one's probably the most damning study I have. I've cited it before, but in this article it states, if you doubt the objectivity of this site above, it's worth pointing out that the Center for Disease Control, in a report ordered by President Obama in 2012 following the Sandy Hook massacre, estimated that the number of crimes prevented by guns could be even higher, as many as 3 million annually, or some 8,200 every day. So they produced this. This was the CDC produced this study saying that firearms were used in life-saving scenarios, as in good usages of a firearm, 500,000 to 3 million times a year. If you want to see gun deaths a year, a lot of people are unaware of that statistic. Gun deaths a year usually range around 35 to 40,000 a year. That has nothing to do with whether it was a good usage of the firearm or if it was a negative usage of the firearm. About 2/3 of all of those deaths every year is suicide. So those are firearms that are used to commit suicide. So only about 1/3, so usually it's around 13 to 15,000 every single year actually used in homicides, violence, right? So you have 13,000, let's say, just to round it up, let's make it 15,000 just for the case. So you have the number of 15,000 versus the very lowest estimate of the CDC under President Obama, which is 500,000 people. So which one is a larger number? 15. So would you rather save 500,000 lives comparatively to 15,000 lives? I think that the answer is pretty simple, and I think that's why after the CDC came out with that study, I don't even know, I'm surprised they even reported it. Probably looked pretty bad for President Obama, and that's why he didn't go forward with any type of gun confiscation. Which, I mean, he talked a big game, but he just did not have the votes in the House or the Senate while he was the president to really run anything. I think the first 2 years he might have, but after that he was done. The rest of the time the Senate or the House was always run by Republicans. So the reason I'm reporting this, and this has nothing to do with what happened yesterday, I just had all these statistics ready to go. I have a video, a clip off of Fox News. This is Pete Hegseth talking to Congressional Noir, who is a Second Amendment advocate. Play 10.
Welcome back. Well, 17 House Democrats flipping their stance on a controversial piece of gun control legislation, voting against, get this, against a motion to notify Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents, when an illegal immigrant attempts to purchase a gun. That's just 2 years after they voted in favor of it. Attorney and gun activist Congressional Noir is here now. Congressional, help me out here. So a couple of years ago, these Democrats thought, you know what, you should notify ICE if an illegal immigrant tries to buy a gun. Now they've switched their vote. What does that tell us about the left these days?
It tells us that they don't care about anything other than control. Anybody can look at this and see very blatantly that the only reason they did this is because they didn't want to make angry a potential constituency, which they've been trying to use for the longest time to usurp what I've said before was the black vote.
Folks, this decision by the Democrats, 17 of them in the House, deciding to completely flip their standards when they agreed upon this in I think it was the Obama administration, the idea of ICE getting notified every single time an illegal alien attempts to buy a firearm. Now they don't want to enact that law, that legislation. They think somehow that's unfair or that's infringing. The fact that they are so willing to go with gun control for regular American citizens but they're worried about the rights of people that are not citizens of the United States, the rights of illegal aliens, more than the rights of their own citizenry, is disgusting, and it is very concerning. Now, at the very end, what Congressional Noir says, the Second Amendment advocate. He's been a Second Amendment advocate. He's also a lawyer. The dude's a genius. The guy's a wizard. He has his own little YouTube channel. I highly suggest you check it out if you want to learn more about Second Amendment rights and how the government's coming for your guns. Check him out there. But what he says at the very end, he's a black man, so he says at the very end, he goes, what they're trying to do is usurp their power of their original base, the black vote. What you say, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And this is something that I've actually heard from Candace as well. A lot of black conservatives have been coming out saying the same thing. Right now, they're looking to get rid of the black voter, as in they don't want the black voter anymore. They don't want to be relying on the black voter. They want to add as many voters. So now they're victim group right now. They try to say, oh, the black voters are victim group. This is the group that we're going to help out. This is the group that we're all for. But then they're saying, hey, let all these illegal aliens in here and take the black voters as jobs. So it is very, it is counterintuitive to what their original stance is. So when they let in all these illegal aliens, the point of doing this is they want to be able to get rid of the black voter. They don't want to have to be relying on the black voter anymore. What they want is they want the illegal alien voter that soon gets amnesty. That's who their new voting base is. Because they've also instilled these through abortions, through Planned Parenthood, which was originally put in black neighborhoods by a eugenist that was that I think her name's Margaret Sanger. Through a eugenist that was of the Democrat Party. It was the KKK started like Planned Parenthood. That was their big thing. They put it in black neighborhoods because they did not want them to repopulate. So if it were not for that, the black population would be double of what it is now. If it were not for Planned Parenthood being put in black neighborhoods, okay? So what they do is they want the illegal alien vote. For that reason, the illegal alien, they think, maybe will repopulate much more often. They want to be able to get rid of the black vote. They know that black Americans, in a general sense, are much more religious than the regular white American is, and they may stick to... they're definitely against the LGBT lobby. Candace Owens was just talking about it the other day, how in general black Americans are against the LGBT lobby. Not really the L or the G, moreover the T part of the lobby that they're against, and they'll never be able to win them over in that case. So I think there's a couple of things that the Democrat Party have been disappointed with in their black voting base, so they're trying to usurp that base and go to a new voting base. And by allowing these illegal aliens in, this actually hurts the black voter the most. So it's like they have to pick one or the other, because eventually they're going to get called out for it, because I know Candace Owens has been going pretty hard at them. Congressional Noir. What's the other? There's Leo Terrell. There's a lot of prominent blacks, conservatives. Brandon Ingram's another one. I think the guy's name is Robert Smith Jr. I think he's another black conservative as well. So yeah, so that's not going to play well in their case. It's not going to work out for them. So Congressional Noir essentially is saying. The very last article I have here before I hit all of my my smaller headlines. Facebook runs ads for products of genocide in China. So you say, well, that's all right. I mean, that headline's crazy. The Epoch Times piece. It's written by Bree Dale. On August 20th, 2020, the Epoch Times reported that U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized over 13 tons of human hair products from the western province of Xinjiang. In the report, investigative journalist Ethan Gutman stated, and I quote, "My back-of-the-envelope calculation is that this shipment represents the hair and approximately 90% or 90,000 women incarcerated in re-education camps." End quote. Although this sort of long exotic hair, deep chestnut, brown, red highlights are usually identified in Chinese catalogs with the euphemism Mongolian hair, the hair is shaved from the heads of Uyghur, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and Hu women. So women that were in these concentration camps, Uyghur Muslims that were in these concentration camps, their hair is being shaved and sold. I think also on what was it? I'm sorry, just Facebook. This one's about on Facebook. and they're the ones running ads for them. So shortly after the Customs and Border Protection discovery, the Trump administration swiftly responded, issuing strict sanctions on CCP, as in the Chinese Communist Party, linked companies, later expanding those sanctions on Chinese officials once they realized that there's this weird trafficking of hair. A source in Italy provided the Epoch Times with screenshots of a conversation with an established company, Beijing YSG Human Hair Products Trading Company, reportedly telling the source it is located in Hong Kong, but whose location on its page and its name suggests it is within mainland China. Within the conversation, as seen in the screenshots provided, the source asked YSG where the hair was obtained and if it was from Uyghur ethnic group. YSG responded, and I quote, "Hello, dear friend, our hair is Uyghur hair," end quote. The Epoch Times followed up with several other sources confirming a pattern of similar companies engaging in similar transactions on Facebook, targeting Western European and U.S. women. Sources explain that when they search for real hair extensions or real hair wigs, ads would begin appearing on their Facebook timelines, ads with the same videos, same claims, but different company names. When contacted, these companies all claimed to be located in Hong Kong and that their real human hair products were of the highest quality. So the reason that they report that they're in Hong Kong is because there's much more freer trade from Hong Kong to the United States. There was hardcore sanctions on China at that time, which is why they falsely report that. I also talk to many business owners that are Amazon sellers as well as Facebook sellers. And they tell me, oh, well, there's these Chinese companies are all over the place. And what they do is as soon as the government kind of gets a hold of what they're doing, decides to sanction them, or Amazon decides to shut them down, they just build another company and they do the exact same thing, and they put small modifications on their logo and their pictures. They just continue to run the same business. So as of March 21st, YSG continues selling through Facebook hair. It admitted was from Uyghurs. Similar companies suggested by the social media platform appear also to be selling Uyghur hair. Since a woman's long hair is highly valued in Uyghur culture, the hair products being sold are almost certainly a product of the ongoing persecution and not donated or sold freely. So the ongoing persecution meaning these people are in concentration camps and they're selling their hair, they're shaving their heads like the Nazis did to the Jews. So how Facebook makes its money. This is very interesting. Facebook's making their money off of this, folks, because these people are paying for the advertisements. According to a report issued by Statista, in 2020, over 97.9% of Facebook's global revenue was generated from advertising, with Facebook ad revenue standing at close to $86 billion US. When a company or companies generate an advertisement for the sale of products or services on a social media platform, each ad goes through an approval process as determined by Facebook advertisement policies, which there's a link that you can click there. Not only does Facebook receive revenue from the advertisements purchased, but they claim strict oversight and approval of all such advertisements. So, folks, from my own experience here, I can speak from my own experience. I am not allowed to advertise on Facebook because I talk about political stuff. I talk about historical stuff. I'm unable to advertise on Facebook. But Facebook, don't worry, because Uyghur Muslim hair can be sold on Facebook. That is part of a genocide currently. So genocidal products can be sold on Facebook and can be advertised on Facebook. But my speech, sitting here talking about conservative values, is unable to be advertised on Facebook. Facebook is allowed to shut me down, and they don't allow my advertisements. They say, F you, we don't want your money. But China, we will openly take your money for products of genocide. Here, come on over. So human rights and big tech legislation. On March 16th, 2021, Facebook announced a new commitment to human rights policy. This is so ironic. Combating, among things, disinformation, an issue that will be addressed when leaders of social media platforms such as Facebook testify before the House Committee on Energy and Commerce this week. Within the initiative, Facebook declares, and I quote, "Our goal is for Facebook as a business and a platform to be a place for equality, safety, dignity, and free speech, the core principles of human rights, and to build systems that respect human rights and guidance of the UNGP, so UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights," which UN is just a giant world organization. So apparently they like the idea of equality, free speech on their platform. To be honest with you folks, I've not tried to advertise probably in a month just because at this point it's futile. I always get turned down. So maybe I'll check that out after the show and see if they actually would allow me to advertise, considering they allow products of Uyghur genocide to be advertised on their site. So now I'll get to my quick headlines. Stimulus making it into stocks and crypto. It's a very interesting piece. Seeking Alpha is the name of the site that it's on. A new poll from Mizuho Securities found that 2 out of 5 stimulus check recipients plan to invest at least some part of the proceeds into Bitcoin and stocks. Full breakdown of this poll. 20% of check recipients are forecast to allocate as much as 20% of their checks to the investments. 13% are expected to allocate 20 to 80%, and 2% are expected to put 80% or more into the markets. That means around 10% of total gross payments, or around $40 billion of the $380 billion in direct checks, could be allocated to the world's most popular crypto and equity purchases. So, I think there's all these rules. You can't tell people investing advice, so I just want to say, don't listen to my investing advice. I'm not a professional. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. Do as you please. But I will say, with the rates of inflation, it would not be a bad idea to invest in cryptocurrency or the stock market. The stock market right now is at a very low. They're not at an all-time low, obviously, but they're at a low rate. Since September, I'd probably say they're at a low right now, where you can buy them and really make some decent, quick turnover money. I would say with the rate of inflation, you will see those securities go up. They will consistently move as the dollar is inflated, whereas your dollar sitting in your bank account, it will stay the same value. It will not increase in value. Now, in terms of crypto, people see it as a much more risque or aggressive buy. Any money that you invest, just in a general sense, you should be prepared to lose at any time. It should be almost like your free money. You should be prepared to lose it. You do not throw your entire bank account into any market. It's just not a good idea if for contingency situations. But I'm not going to advise, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I just humbly suggest, I'm going to tell you it would not be a bad idea to invest in either crypto, whether it's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is generally pretty easy. You just buy it and you just hold it. You can put it in some sort of an earn account. You can put it in an interest account. They'll give you around 5 or 6% in these interest accounts. And that's it. It's supposed to hedge against inflation, almost like a gold denomination, but it is on the internet. So people say, oh, what's the background of crypto? What's to back it up? People say, what's the backup of the dollar? What's to back it up? Because we no longer go on the gold standard. We have to always remember that currency is derived by one of two things: what it is backed by somewhat to an extent. But more importantly, what are the people willing to use as currency? That is more the question to be answered when it comes to crypto. Are people willing to take it? What are the people willing to take as a source of payment? Years ago, bartering, trading a chicken for a cow or 2 hens for 1 cow. That was the way in which they did it. Now we use paper money. Maybe in the future it can be some sort of asset that is derived from a blockchain. It is all dependent on what the people en masse want to use as a source of currency. That is the most important thing to think about in that case. So, to continue, vaccine effective against COVID variants. This is a JAMA Network journal. You can check that one out. I saw Rand Paul put it up and called out Dr. Fauci. Still has yet to get any answers on it. But it shows that the vaccine is about 95% effective on COVID variants. People sick of lockdowns. This is an mrctv.org piece. And it has videos from the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Germany, Canada, and Austria, Sweden, and Australia. On March 20th, they all went out and they petitioned or protest. They protested, rather, this whole silly 6-foot mask mandate, anti-social distancing command. So they just went out there and they protested, unlike the people of America, which, because we have, really seems like we have no backbone. at this point. We have a bunch of other countries that are sick of the lockdowns. It seems like Americans are cozy and they don't really care much. Trump saying this is not a free press. That is an Epoch Times piece. And to follow that one up, I have an American Military News piece. Trump is planning to create his own social media platform. Obama's former White House physician says that something is not right with Joe Biden. And I have an actual tweet of what he said. His name is Ronnie Jackson. So he was the physician during the Obama administration. He said, I served as White House physician under 3 presidents. I've seen what it takes physically and mentally to do the job. I can tell you right now that the way Biden is hiding from the public is a major red flag. Something's not right. End quote. So, and additionally, the very last thing I want to say, Dan Bongino is going to be taking over Rush Limbaugh's slot, the 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Kudos to Dan. I believe I want to say, to plug it, I think it's May, the middle of May, maybe the May 20th, May 23rd. He's going to start in that slot on, I guess, nationally syndicated. 3 hours from 12 to 3. So that will conclude this one. I greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in as always. And stay up to date. I would hope you would join the Facebook page, join the Rumble page, join everywhere. I'm trying to get my subscribers up. I'm trying to get my viewership up. And pass the mic, let people know, or I'm sorry, drop the mic on people. Pass the mic or drop the mic, I don't really care. Either one works. Let them know about the podcast. And that will be it. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you this weekend. Thank you.